Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I apologize. We are having some technical difficulties because our presenter, Fran, is having challenges. She works at the University of Delaware, and their technical system isn't allowing her to pull up this. So the access code is giving us problems here. So let me, I promise you that we will be starting this presentation in the next few minutes. I'm going to introduce Fran. It'll be just a few minutes. Thank you. So my name is Tina Andrews. I am with the Parent Information Center of Delaware, and I am a parent consultant. Our organization has been around for 35 years now, and today we are going to be doing our presentation on conflict resolution options for parents. So the Parent Information Center was established more than 30 years ago, 35 now, and our mission is to advance effective parent engagement and education. Our vision is for all children to fulfill their potential to succeed. We do this in a number of ways, including one-on-one consultations. So I have parents that will call and a parent consultant is assigned to them. We do work throughout the state. In all 3 counties. We do training such as this, audio conferences, and annual education and parent leadership conferences. We are having one coming up in Sussex County for our Spanish-speaking parents, and we have them throughout the year. There are also many online resources at our website, pickofdel.org, and a weekly e-news that we send out on Thursdays that has information about things happening throughout the state for parents of children with special needs. Thank you so much, Olga. I see your comment there. There is a call-in phone number. If you cannot hear, and let me find the information for that. I apologize. As I said, this is not normal. We usually do not have such technical difficulties, but sometimes it does happen. So the call-in number is 303-248-0285, and the access code is 999-7394. So I'm going to put those in the comments as well here for you so that you can be able to call in if you need to and access the webinar. Also, this will be put onto our website and our Facebook page for you later on. Okay. All right. So we also work in system advocacy so that we we can ensure the interests of children throughout the state with disabilities are considered at the local and national level in terms of legislation as well. So, right now, I am going to see if
the conference has been unmuted.
Fran has joined us.
I have joined you. Can you hear me now?
I can? Okay. I can hear you. Yay!
Yay!
So, apologize for the technical difficulties. We do have Fran on the line, and Fran is going to talk to us today about conflict resolution options for families. Fran is a policy scientist working for the Conflict Resolution Program of the Institute of Public Administration at the University of Delaware. She has been there for 18 years. In this role, she manages Delaware's statewide special education facilitation and mediation. And she is the coordinator of the longest-running IEP Meeting Facilitation system in the country and has trained facilitators in the United States, throughout the United States. She's also an 8-time presenter for Cadre, which is a national organization. And we are very happy to have her here today to talk with you about conflict resolution. She works in conflict resolution with families and school systems. And I have worked personally with her, and I think it'll be a great training for you. If you want to make a comment at the end, Fran will look at your comments and answer them. But until then, we're going to hold questions. And thank you so much, Fran, for joining us. I have your PowerPoint up because Fran does not have, she has the PowerPoint, but she does not have access to the screen. So I am on the first page of your PowerPoint, services that support collaborative decision-making within special education.
Great, thank you. So technology is a wonderful thing until it doesn't work. So thank you for the audience hanging in there to make this happen. I also thank Pick and Tina for inviting me to share this time with you, and I look forward to hearing any feedback or questions that you have. The only thing that I can't do from an answering question standpoint is answer any questions that are personal. Anything about the system or how it works, I'm happy to share that information, but there will be information at the end of the PowerPoint that will show you how to contact me if you have something to discuss that's more on a personal level. So I don't have the controls for the PowerPoint, so if Tina, can we go next? Thank you. So this is called the SPARC program. We are actually paid through a contract with the Department of Education. And their mandate is to provide mediation services, but they also support IEP facilitation. And you can see why we call ourselves SPARC, because you don't want to walk around saying Special Education Partnership for the Amicable Resolution of Conflict. I'm lucky if I can even remember that on any given day. So SPARC is much easier. Next. So there are two services, as I mentioned, the IEP facilitation as well as mediation. And we're going to be talking about both of those individually. But the one thing that they all have in common is that those of us that work in the conflict resolution program for SPARC, and there's 4 of us, we are all considered neutral third parties. And what we do in the IEP facilitation and mediation are different. So we're going to have a conversation about that. But I'd like to move into the types of conflict and the types of issues that you can get resolved through different processes. And then at the end, we're going to talk about some tips that parents can find to be very useful in trying to problem solve with school districts and actually they're usable with anyone. So that's what we're going to do today. Next. Okay, so the types of conflict resolutions, we break into 3 categories. So when you have an issue from an IEP, or maybe you haven't even gotten beyond the IFSP, there are 3 strategies. One we call internal, which is trying to work it out through the school district. One is external, so that would be bringing in someone from our office. And then there's the legal, and that's covered under your procedural safeguards. And you all probably know what that is. It's a packet of information that the schools are required to offer to you at every IEP meeting. It's long, it's a ton of pages, and people don't really like to read it a whole lot. So we're going to talk a little bit about what your procedural safeguards are, but there are 3 avenues for addressing issues that come up. Next. In the internal path, we call that talking with the teacher. If the problem is in the classroom and it's a specific teacher, a specific subject, then your best avenue for trying to deal with that is to go right to the source. If it's a teacher, if it's a related service staff like an occupational therapist or a speech pathologist, talking directly to them is always the best avenue. When you don't feel like that's an option, or you feel like you have already tried that and that hasn't worked, then the next step would be within the building. And sometimes in some school districts, within the building means the principal, or it could mean the assistant principal. And all school districts are different, so they have different names for these folks. And they might even have a specific person like an educational diagnostician who is a person that can help you, but it's with staying within the school. And then, of course, every school district has what they call a district level supervisor of special education, or sometimes they're called the director of special education, but they are the overseers of all special education services within that school district. So when working within the building itself doesn't work, then going to the district level for that person who knows what's supposed to go on and is interested in hearing what your issues are, that would be your next and final internal option. Next. When it comes to external, which is what I'm saying we are here at this location for SPARC, we have different things that we get involved in. Again, the IEP meeting facilitation, mediation, and then the legal processes. So you can go next. As I said, the procedural safeguards address things like a due process hearing. A parent can file for a due process. They can file for a state complaint. Sometimes that's been referred to as an administrative complaint. And then when you file either one of those 2 options, you are already offered the option of doing mediation. So mediation can be requested when it has to do with one of your procedural safeguards, like the complaint or the due process, or you can ask for mediation without going to the legal aspect of it. So we're gonna take a look at that as well. But we're going to move into the IEP meeting facilitation and drill down a little bit further on what that is. So next. Okay, and you can go next. So part of our SPARC information is available online. You can see these documents. There are some other things that you might find helpful on the university website. You can see the link that's noted there in the orange box on the left. But IEP meeting facilitation is an opportunity for a facilitator to come into your meeting to try and help the level of conversation. And when I say conversation, I'm talking about hearing. So it really helps to have a neutral third party in that meeting, not because we're experts on your child or expert on all educational availability of related service folks or what the plan should look like. We're actually there to try to create a level field for having a discussion. Many times parents will call us and say, I'm just really frustrated. I go to the IEP meeting and I don't ever feel listened to. I have suggestions. I feel like they shut me down. I just don't feel like I'm ever heard. So that is our focus. We are not the experts in the room on your child or education. We are more the experts on how to have a conversation so that everyone feels heard, that the school folks can talk, that you can talk, that you're heard and you're hearing what they're having to say. And hopefully some shared decision making about what is in the best interest of the student is what takes place there. Also solving, if you will, solving the problem at the lowest possible level is the IEP meeting. So that's keeping the team intact to address those issues is like your first level of trying to get things resolved. Next. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both types of processes. So one of the advantages of having an IEP meeting facilitation is that it does keep that team intact. So every member of that team knows what's going on and what has been discussed. We make sure that all voices are heard. And that means a parent, you also can bring an advocate to a meeting and we invite their voice to be heard. Obviously, the parent voice is the number one concern because you are in a position to continue to have a relationship with all of these folks at the school level. Doesn't matter if you're starting out in kindergarten or first grade or you're in 12th grade, that relationship continues. So we always want to help parents be able to get their point across and make sure that they feel heard because that is an ongoing relationship with schools. We also do try to balance out how much information you receive at any given time. Sometimes you bring up a topic, it gets discussed, it gets set aside, and that can be beneficial if it's not a requirement of what you're talking about in that IEP, but you want to balance not only the topics, but you want to balance also all the voices that you hear at the meeting. Sometimes you may have experienced that some folks will come into the IEP meeting and they don't have a lot to say. Well, is it they don't have a lot to say because they don't know, or they don't feel like they have the opportunity, or they're not sure what a parent wants to hear, or they don't want to upset a parent. So making sure from our perspective as the facilitator that everyone is heard from because everyone has a valuable viewpoint to share. Some of the disadvantages of having a facilitator in a meeting is that we slow it down. One of the number one things we hear also from parents and school folks is that there's just not a lot of time to have long meetings. Well, you know what? Sometimes that's important because not everything can be resolved in a 45-minute or even an hour time frame. Sometimes it does take longer. And if we're in the meeting as a facilitator, we also want to make sure that everybody has the full opportunity to participate, not that they're cut off in any way. Sometimes a perception is a problem, a perception being a viewpoint of a participant there. Sometimes a perception by a parent can be that, oh, well, the school asked for you to come to the meeting. I don't trust the school, therefore I don't trust you. Well, we do get invited to a meeting either at the request of a parent or at the request of the school district, but we always make sure that we contact both parties, right? We're going to talk with the school. We're also going to talk to the parent, and we're going to make sure that a parent wants us to be involved. Because if they have that perception that we're not going to be fair or unbiased or treat everyone equally, or they believe that the school district is paying our salary, then they're not going to believe that we're going to be beneficial. So we always try to confirm with parents and school people that we do not take sides, and if that perception is you can't help us, then we don't go to your meeting. So there's also the chance of dependence. A lot of times when we go to meetings and the meeting has run better or has run well and good decisions have been made, then a parent or a school persons want us to attend every IEP meeting, and that's really not what we're there for. We're there to help you get over the bump in the road or whatever that particular barrier is in that moment, and then hopefully when you have a successful meeting you can continue to move forward and have more successful meetings, so you don't have to be dependent on a third party coming in to try and to help you fix things. Next. So the number one thing that we try to achieve is a very fair and consistent process, a process that you can feel comfortable with time and time again, as you have to meet for annual or triennial, but a fair and consistent process for all the team members. Once you have that, then cooperative participation occurs. It's easier to participate if you feel like you're treated fairly and the process is consistent. When you have that, then communication improves, trust can be built, an effective IEP can be created, everyone has a buy-in to that IEP, and then it's able to be sustained. Always knowing that you have that option to request an IEP meeting at any time. Next. So a few words about mediation. As I said earlier, it is always an option for you. You don't have to file on the right-hand side of your screen. You don't have to file for due process, and you don't have to ask for a state complaint. On the website for DOE, which I actually find kind of hard to navigate, there is a form, a mediation request form. So you can automatically request mediation either by submitting that form to the Department of Ed, or you can call our office and we can help you out with that form. But it's a very simple form. It just asks some identifying information about you, the student's name, what school district, what's the problem, and what's the solution you're looking for. And that's really it. It's really kind of a data collection, if you will. So that you're not revealing anything by requesting mediation or filling out that form, but just know that mediation is always available. So we're going to talk about what mediation is in the next slide here. So again, this is a SPARC form. So on the left-hand side, you can see that it's voluntary, it's confidential. It is different. Mediation is different from an IEP meeting. It does not involve every single person from the IEP team. It will always include the special education district level person, because that is the person that has the authority to make decisions on behalf of the school. But because that person is removed from all the schools, they may not have the up-to-date information about what's going on with your child. So they are going to request that someone come to the meeting. Could be the principal, could be a principal and a teacher, but it depends on what what the issue is. They want to make sure that they have the right people at the table to address the issue. So, for instance, if you had a physical therapy issue, then that wouldn't require a teacher per se, although it could, especially if physical therapy issues were around the classroom, in the classroom environment. But it may be just with the services from a PT. So it would be attending the mediation would be the special ed director as well as the physical therapist, you, another family member, or whomever you would like to bring, and advocates can also go to mediation. So when you go to mediation, it is not conducted at the school. On rare occasions, parents will request, because of convenience, to have it in a school building. You might be at the district level, but typically it's because it's a neutral process. We tend to meet in neutral locations like libraries, boys and girls club, things like that. But it can be arranged to be convenient to you. It can be arranged convenient to where you live or where you work. But that's a detail that we would work out when mediation is requested. So the different thing about mediation also is that the mediator is the facilitator of that process. So again, they're neutral, but there is a very specific format for mediation steps. So everyone at the table gets to tell their story or their perspective of a situation uninterrupted from anyone else. So if you've been having problems, your child is in 6th grade and you've been having problems since 1st grade, and you want to talk about all that history, that's fine. Nobody's going to cut you off. That is part of your story. That's valuable information for you to share with the school people who are sitting there. So when you're done, then everyone else at the table gets to share why they are there and what they're hoping to get out of that. So, sometimes if you've been in that one school district for years, and there are people who have been through the process with you and your child before, they might have a story to add. They might have a different perspective. If you're talking about transportation services, they may have additional information to share about that, but they also get that uninterrupted time. And then when everyone has had that opportunity to speak uninterrupted, then the next step in the process is to open it up for questions. You may have heard something that you don't necessarily agree with or you have a different perspective on. It's generally through that going back and forth of a typical type of conversation that if an agreement is going to be reached, it starts to gel at that point. The mediator not only is going to help with the level of back and forth and problem solving, they will also have a form that they project up on the wall that is a Department of Education form, and it's kind of a fill in the blank. And if you reach agreements, the mediator is going to type in so that you can see it's done right in that moment, write in what you all have agreed to for moving forward. So there's always the resolution for each particular problem that gets identified in mediation. There's a person named and attached to each one of those resolutions so that if it falls through, you know who to contact. And then there's a time frame. So if it's something that needs to happen within a week or a month, or you're going to come back in 3 months, that is also indicated on that mediation form. But the mediation form is printed out at mediation, and you are given a copy, and the school is given a copy, and that's considered a legally binding document for moving forward. So that mediation agreement does become part of your child's school record. And I think that's all I'll say at this point about mediation. But this is also available on our website, as you can tell. So next. So here's the advantages and disadvantages of mediation. So one of the advantages, it's not an entire team. And I've been in some IEP meetings that have had 12 or 17 people sitting there. While in mediation, you only have the special ed director and those with pertinent information to the problems that you're trying to clear up. So less people sometimes is much more beneficial. It also helps you get clear on what the issue or issues are. It really gives you the opportunity to delve down into trying to pull apart what's not happening, what should be changed, and to really get into very in-depth conversations if that's needed. And it's those in-depth conversations that result in collaborative problem solving and agreement building, because you've worked really hard to get an understanding not only of what the issue is but what the resolution should be. And as I mentioned, it is legally binding. So some of the disadvantages really is the fact that a mediation, you can go to mediation and you may not get what you're looking for. You know, the school authorities still may say, no, we don't think that's in the child's best interest. We don't agree with that. We don't see it that way. So you can go to mediation and you can have no agreement. You can go to mediation and get a full agreement. Or you can go to mediation and get a partial agreement, meaning if you walk into mediation and you have 5 specific issues and you only come to agreement on 3 of them, then it's your decision about what to do with those 2. You can file a state complaint, you can file a due process, or you can decide that those 2 things, given the fact that you've gotten the 3 that you wanted, maybe those 2 things aren't important anymore, and that you'll continue to watch and see what the team does with those 2 unresolved issues. So all your choices are always there for how you want to proceed. But sometimes you do spend the energy to do mediation, and it can take sometimes 2 hours, sometimes more, depending on how complex the issues are. So it may not change the result, and the entire team is not there. So that's as a good thing and a bad thing. So if the entire team is not there, then it is the special ed director's job to make sure that all decisions that were made in mediation do get communicated to the entire team, just because they're not sitting there. Okay, next. So how do you know which one you should do? And I always try to tell parents to think about what they're trying to achieve and where are the issues. So if you're still at the level where you have an upcoming meeting, you know you have several issues that need to be put on the table, and you feel like you're not being heard by the entire team, you might want to start out there. When you've gotten to the point, like sometimes what I hear is, I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. I can't keep going to IEP meetings. It's a waste of my time. Nothing ever changes. I only have this one issue. It's about gym class, or it's about assistive technology. If we could just problem solve around that, or more issues that are very specific, then mediation might be your option. But you can always call our office, and we will help you think through those. Also, the Parent Information Center is a great resource for thinking through processes. So they also are very knowledgeable about IEP meetings and mediation, and they can help you think through it as well. But you have both those resources. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to explain what they are and help you pick one, but we would also always recommend that you go back to Parent Information Center and discuss that with them and see if that makes sense for your situation, because after all, they probably know more about your situation and your family and your student than we're going to know, because we're just picking up the phone call and we don't have a lot of the background. We're only going to have the background that you share with us. Next. So how do people get to us? So you can call. You can just pick up the phone and call. You can go on our website. There's a link there as well. We get parents who recommend from other parents. So parents can call themselves, just like school districts can call. Advocacy groups will tell you to call us just to get a different perspective, and you can also call the Department of Education. If you've ever reached out to the Department of Ed, you talk to an education associate, and they will often tell you to give us a call and or pick, and we can also reach out to you if you give permission for the Department of Ed to share your contact information with us. They would never break confidentiality by having a conversation with you and then send me an email and say, here, can you call this parent? Well, if you haven't requested that, you're not going to hear from us. So it's very much driven by you. Next. So this is what I do a lot of training in school districts. I've trained for advocates, and one of the things that we always try to help groups understand is where things tend to break down where special education is concerned. So go to the next slide. So we call these two areas content and process. That's where issues will come up. So when you look at the content, we call content the very basics of what an IEP and special education involves. So evaluations, assessments, records, accommodations, related services, all of those things are the content. So you may have a disagreement about present levels of performance. That's fine. Teams are going to have disagreements about what they see as relevant data and what kind of accommodations are needed and are the goals realistic and the benchmarks. But where teams get stuck is in the process part. How do you talk about that? If you're not happy with something, how do you say it? How do you problem solve with it? Who participates? So the whole process piece of making decisions and gaining agreements, that's what we're the experts on, and that's what we help with. We're not there as a neutral third party to make any kind of comments about whether one thing or another is better for your child. We're there to help you all as experts on the team, you as a parent and an expert on the child, and educators who know what resources and what best practices are out there. They are the content, and you are the content. We are the process. So that's what we come in to do, is to help people communicate. And it's where people get stuck the most, right? It's always hard to have a conversation with someone that you're having a disagreement with. So by having a neutral person there to help have that conversation can be very beneficial. Next. So the number one strategy that we say helps teams the most is simply clarifying what the problem is. If you don't clarify and specifically name it, you don't know if you're on the same page. So go to the next slide. So I really love this as an example. So if we could hear each other, what I would ask you is, what do you see? What do you automatically see? What pops up into your vision? So people will say, well, I see a rabbit. And other people will say, no, I don't see a rabbit, I see a duck. And then other people will say, well, I see both. Well, I think this is a really good example of how people can get off track by not clarifying what the problem is. So if you say in a meeting, I have a problem with transportation, and you don't clearly say when and how and why, then it leaves room for the school people to come to their own judgment. So when you say transportation, they're probably thinking about the ride home, your child's ride home or a ride into school, when in fact in your mind, you're thinking about transportation in terms of getting on the bus or getting off the bus or waiting for the bus. So clarifying is really important. And it sounds really basic, and I don't know if you've ever watched Dr. Phil, but Dr. Phil has this whole concept, you can't fix what you don't define. So this duck versus rabbit is just an example of showing how you can get off track. And everybody can look at the same thing, but we can see things differently. And so when you're stuck in a problem, you always want to name it. Next one. So this is the second concept, and it's called positions versus interests. And this is an iceberg, believe it or not. It's an iceberg, and kind of that yellow, the blue line across kind of separates the 80% from the 20%. But a position is something that you want. So for instance, I'm going to use a one-on-one aide as an example. All right, so you go into the IEP meeting and you say, I want a one-on-one aide. I think that's what's going to help my child. And the school doesn't quite know what you want that one-on-one aide for. So if you just stay at the top of the iceberg and say, well, that's what I want, this is what I'm demanding, and you never go beyond that, then you don't know the whys of it. And there are all sorts of reasons why people want what they want, what their demand equals. And those are called interests. So your interests could be fueled by beliefs or values, fears, needs. And so if you stay at the top and a school says no, the next thing you have to do is give them the why. Well, you think a one-on-one aide would be helpful because you want some more academic support. You want your child to be successful in math class. And you think having some support there through a one-on-one aide would help them do better in math. So that's one. Or you want physical assistance. Well, again, you have to clarify what that means. So physical assistance, do you mean in the classroom? Do you mean in the hallway? Do you mean in the bathroom? So trying to, I call it like peeling an onion. You want to delve down into the whys of what you're looking for so that people understand what your need is or what the student's need is, so they can come up with potentially better ideas than a one-on-one aide. You know, sometimes you hear in high school with a one-on-one aide that it makes the student feels, you know, like they're being singled out because nobody else in that class has a one-on-one aide and they don't want one either. So it gives you the bigger picture to talk about when you think about position, what you want. 99% of the time, parents go into IEP meetings or mediation and they know exactly what it is they want. It's the peeling of the onion and trying to figure out the whys underneath. What's important? What need is that one-on-one aide going to serve? And it could be all sorts of things. You know, it's not limited to just these things. It could be all sorts of things. But that's where you want to go to have that level of conversation. So next. And this is another thing that I share with school folks when I do training. You know, at the base of this figure is the parent involvement and partnering. Everyone knows, it's common knowledge that parent involvement and feeling like they're a partner in the meeting is extremely important. It's also important to understand conflict. You know, one of the things that I find really interesting is that we think that we're going to send our student to school and there's never going to be a conflict. Well, really, if a child's in school for 18 years, what 18-year-old relationship have any of us been in that we haven't had a bunch of conflict? It could be little ones, could be big ones, but understanding that conflict will happen and setting the expectation is that we can deal with it because we're going to have open communication and we're going to be prepared to have that conversation, and then we can collaboratively problem solve. Once we problem solve, then we can put a decision in place and we can execute that decision, and then we can follow up to see if that is going to help at all. So next slide. So I kind of leave you with this thought. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. So view each new meeting or an encounter as an opportunity to start again, because that relationship with the team is so important to supporting your child's education as they move forward. You know, it's easy to hold grudges, and it's easy to feel like nobody is looking out for your child. You know, and does that mean that you're not going to have some personality issues, or you just don't think that this teacher is a good fit for your student? No, those things happen and they can be addressed at an IEP meeting, but use it as an opportunity to start again. So next. So finally, our perspective is we expect that win-win is possible. We expect that because parents have nothing but the best interest for their student, and schools, they have the best expectation for the student as well. Those of us in the conflict resolution world always look at attacking the problem and not the person. We all know that everyone working together is in the best interest of the student, and just remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be modifications of something. It could be a trial. It could be for 4 weeks. It could be a marking period. But you know, sometimes it's just worth trying a piece of something as opposed to just fighting about all or nothing. So next. So this is our contact information. This is mine specifically. As I said, there's 4 of us who go to IEP meetings and are mediators. So I'm not the only person who does this. But please feel free to check out the information on our website. The link is right there. When we are always happy to talk through anything. You don't specifically need to call for our services. You can just call because we're out there and it's another resource for you. That concludes my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions.
I don't see any, but definitely thank you so much. And if you are on this call or if you are listening or watching it later, please do contact Fran or contact the Parent Information Center if you have some conflict, if you anticipate conflict, if you have a question about the process or your options. That is our job at the Parent Information Center, is to talk to you about all the options out there, to talk about your priorities, and to really support you in making decisions and advocating for your child and their education. So please definitely feel free to contact us. The number at the Parent Information Center is 302-999-7394. And you can reach us at pickofdell@pickofdell.org or pickofdell at pickofdell, the webpage, pickofdell.com, sorry. So there are many avenues to reach us. Additionally, we do a lot of webinars like this one. We have one coming up next Thursday as well, and Facebook Lives every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So we look forward to hearing your perspective and answering your questions. Right now, when this webinar ends, you will be sent a survey at the email that you provided. Please fill the survey out. We do not charge our families. There is no fee for webinars and presentations, but we do get the information. We do strive to make it better. We do report the parents that use our service, so hopefully it is useful to you. And thank you so much, Fran, and thank you everybody for joining us. This will be available on our website in about a week and on our YouTube page. So hopefully you can access it there. If you had any problems at the beginning, there were some technical issues. So you should be able to see it in its entirety there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.